Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And I'm John, and welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive, critical eye.
That's right. And to avoid lazy negativity, we're making this a little bit of a drinking game here.
Hey, yo. Yo.
Anytime we say anything negative about this film, about each other, about anything at all, if we are negative, we play this sound. And that means we have to take a drink, and we hope you drink along with us.
So, present your shots. You at home, pour yourselves a glass, grab a seat, and tune into our YouTube comments as we get eviscerated for being three guys talking about women talking again.
I mean, you know, it's all fair play. It's art, man. It's out there in the world. I'm excited to talk about this movie with you guys, to be honest. Critics' Choice Award-winning movie. We are recording this after the Critics' Choice, and this one, what did it win? Does anybody have a guess what it won? Because I'm assuming you didn't look through the nominations and winners list like I did.
Original screenplay.
Not original, but yes, it won adapted screenplay.
Best part.
Adapted screenplay.
It's definitely adapted. What'd you say, Dave? Just buzz yourself, you fucking. Yes, this is based on the novel by Miriam Toews. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. Yes, it won Best Adapted Screenplay by writer-director Sarah Polley, who you may know as an actress. She also directed a couple films. Her first film that she directed was Away From Her in 2006, which I thought Julie Christie was going to win an Oscar for that year. It was about an older couple with dementia. What a topic for a first-time director to take on.
Just pick an easy one.
That movie has one of my favorite endings of all time. That movie is so good. People should, if you enjoyed women talking, or if you're interested in Sarah Polley at all, I recommend watching that movie. It's a little heart-wrenching, but it also has a lot of humor. There's a lot of humanity there, and that ending is fucking amazing.
It's great. Yeah. But since we're talking about Sarah Polley really quick, she's Canadian, and she starred in a lot of movies. She was the lead of Dawn of the Dead. She was in movies like Splice, and she actually, believe it or not, she was Nabby Adams in John Adams' miniseries. She played.
I know we were going to mention that for sure. Mr. Nobody. Yeah. I think a lot of people like that movie. Saw that streamed really well with Jared Leto.
Yeah. And
I've never seen Trigger, but that was her most recent.
She's actually like infamous for she was cast as Penny Lane in Almost Famous and had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts from The Law of Enclosures, which was filming in her home country of Canada. So she was recast by Kate Hudson, who was, of course, nominated for an Oscar for that role.
Great job, Kate. That was great. But yeah, that would have been a different career.
I'm glad we're talking about Sarah Polley now, because I'm curious to see how much she'll come up in our discussion of the film, which we will get into soon, people. But if you're new to our podcast, thank you so much for joining us.
She was in Slings and Arrows. Did you guys ever watch?
She was in she was in like the third season or something. Mm-hmm. I love it. You know who else was in Slings and Arrows?
Rachel McAdams.
Nice. Was it Ben Wishaw in that? Isn't he Richard? Wasn't he? No, he wasn't. Forget I said that. He's in the Hallett Crown. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, if you're new to our podcast, we're going to keep it spoiler free for a couple minutes. I actually think there's some context about what's in the novel specifically that isn't thrown up front in the movie that I think is useful if you haven't seen this movie and you're considering seeing it. I'm going to put off that context until right before our spoiler section. We do that sometimes where we give a little intro, we do our general, what'd you think, what'd you feel, spoiler free. And then when we segue into spoilers, I'll provide some more context, which you can take it or leave if you haven't seen the movie yet. Because I knew nothing about this going in, and I thought that benefited me. Also, if you're new to the podcast, at the end of the episode, we will give you our recommendations in our final segment, What You've Been Watching. And we are going to get through some gripes of the week. So if you are just here for the movie, you can go ahead and scoot along, but it'll just be a couple minutes. But first, as always, we got to shout out our sponsors. So, John, why don't you take it from there?
We have a beer sponsor. His name is Carlos Barroso. He texted me the other day a little happy birthday message. Carlos, what's up? Thank you, buddy.
He was better than me. Sorry. Happy birthday, John.
Hey, thanks, you guys. He has a handle on Instagram. You can find it in our show notes and our link tree, cbarroso.beer. Give him a follow, some likes, some love. And the music you hear on this episode and every single episode is provided by the artist Dasein. That's Dasein, Dasein. You can find this music and all the other music that guy makes. It's available for free on the usual music platforms. Go there, follow, listen, subscribe. And please hit us up as well on all of our socials. You can find all that stuff in our social links in our show notes and our link tree. Everything is there, right? front of you. We're also on YouTube, folks. I know we already commented on it, but these videos are available if you want to see us talking about these things. I forget we're videoing ourselves all the time, so I probably look like an unkempt asshole for a good bit of it. But they're there if you want to watch.
Nice. Dave, anything you want to say? Any news you want to get to?
No, I know the Academy just had their VFX Bake Off this week. So that was a little bit exciting. Yeah, they because they have the long list and they get like the 10 companies on the long list to come in and basically run through their process of how they did it, and in front of with a panel and an audience and that sort of thing, and that's how they narrow it down to like the 5 that go on the list. So they haven't released the list yet, but yeah, the Bake Off is it's like VFX royalty. It's great.
I should do a reality show of that. Ding.
I'm surprised they don't stream it somewhere obscure or something. Like,
yeah,
I don't
there's
know
a whole
why
community of people that would be really interested in that.
Stream everything.
But then Top Gun Maverick would have to give away where the actual VFX shots are in the film, so they don't want the public knowing that.
That is true. Yeah, it is a magic show. It's kind of like magicians revealing their secrets. No, yes. I feel you, man. Yeah. Well, anyway.
But then everybody in the room tells their assistants, who tells their friends that they're drinking with, and then everybody will slowly find out.
Yeah.
All right, should we get into our gripes of the week so we can finally get to talking about women talking? All right, fellas, do either of you have a gripe that you need to get off your chest? John, you have been delaying your gripe. You've been not griping the past few weeks. Actually, that's not true. It's just last week.
Yeah, I don't think I've been super frustrated by anything. Dave, if you have one, start, and I know I'll think of something while you're going.
Dave.
I'm fucking mad.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Start that timer.
Coming in hot.
I'm
just
fucking
start
mad.
it,
This is
dude.
not a gripe. I'm fucking mad. Dude, little film called Terrifier 2 this year that came out. Did really, really well. Budget $250,000. Made $10 million in the theaters.
Jesus Christ.
The star of that, Lauren Rivera, who's on Twitter, I follow a few of the guys just to keep up with how it's going because I was like, this is like a little engine that could. It's great. I'm going to follow it. She has been literally fielding sexual harassment on Twitter all week. Like, what? She's had people commenting on her looks and complaining that she doesn't do enough nudity and telling her she's not the right body type for them anyway when they didn't get what they wanted and that sort of thing. And this is fucking appalling. And you know what? This is not Twitter. Everyone's like, oh, that's what Twitter's like. No, this is not Twitter. This is men. This is men doing this. For instance, at A Strange Man 669, you pretty much know what you're getting with there. Patrick's Casket on Twitter and at James Jordan Free, whose Twitter feed on this is a burner account, obviously, because it was created in 2021, is just nuts, has a Bible quote at his header, and if you ever wanted an endless stream of MAGA retweets, that's the place to go. But they've spent the whole week...
Is this man a member of the cult of In Women Talking?
There's a... I don't know, but like there's definitely some like Anon references on the page. But it's like, this is not Twitter. This is men. And men need to stop doing this. And I'm not saying this in defense of women, because quite frankly, Lauren's been doing quite fine defending herself all week. I'm saying this because it's disgusting. You know, if you're a friend of someone who pulls this shit with women, just stop and listen. And if you see something going on, tell them it's not cool. Because if you just shut up, they're going to keep doing it. Everyone needs to just step up and stop this bullshit. Stop turning a blind eye to it. Stop thinking it's okay. It's not okay. You're ruining people's fucking day. It's bullshit. Stop this behavior, men.
Yeah, Dave calling out the actual handles too.
And I went over. Fuck those guys.
Come at us if you want.
Half their thing is anonymity. Well, now everyone knows who you are.
I know it, and I know what you mean, and I will completely respect and observe what you said, that it's not just Twitter, it's men, but Twitter and things like that do allow those kinds of men to hide pretty easily. And
give them a megaphone. It actually promotes. If there's certain
Yeah.
language in it, it puts it up to the top because it knows
I'm just saying, my point is, if the people who are around these people can stop them before they get to it, then maybe the world becomes a nicer place. Like this doesn't need to happen, and it's ridiculous that it happens to people. Like this girl suddenly I'm not sure exactly how famous she was beforehand. Because I just happened upon, I was following it from Terrifier onwards. I don't know these guys, but it's like This is
it's kind of
like
the whole...
you don't deserve that. It's like literally he complained that there was like she didn't get naked in the movie. She came back with, well, I don't think I need to get naked in the movie, and his response was something along the lines of, oh, well, you know, you're too fat for me anyway. Then why did you ask?
First of all, that guy has never touched a naked woman in his entire life. Second of all, these kinds of, what bothers me, and we've all been following along, our podcast has talked about the whole Elon Musk debacle and how he was taking back the freedom of speech in Twitter.
And he immediately silenced journalists.
Yeah, exactly. People who are in, how antithetical it is that like the idea and the principle of freedom of speech that was laid down for, I don't want to get into the weeds of what founding fathers need to be held accountable for, but the idea and the principle of when that kind of application should be used as a right in a civil society. And you think that this is one of those examples? Because those fucking incels use that shit as some kind of like, I have a right to say that. You do have a right to say it, and then we have a right to deal with you accordingly. And I think, you know, whether that's canceling your account, no, you don't. Whether that's
you don't have a right to say that. Fuck your rights.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, even they're saying that like they think you can't censor me.
You do not
I
have a right to say
something
something that's going to hurt someone else.
It's true.
And I think everyone's forgotten that.
Yeah, you certainly don't have a right. Unfortunately, that is a space where you are allowed to say what you want, but it is up to us. Like, isn't
not
this
without
the right
repercussions.
response? No, it's the right. This is the right response for just a community to just be like, this guy keeps saying that, whatever his name 669, and fuck that guy, and nobody listened to him. And what her name was, you know, I hope she's not listening to him either, and that we ignore him enough so that his Twitter feed gets no hits. Unfortunately, that's the fucking algorithm we're dealing with, right? You just cancel your fucking Twitter or stop looking at his posts, and eventually his clickbaity bullshit will just be silenced.
You are well within your rights to use that block function and literally silence these people. It's not censorship. It's just you don't have to put up with what they're saying.
Yeah. Very apropos, Dave. I'm sure we're about to get into a lot of that kind of discussion.
I'm so fucking mad.
We're talking about today.
So mad.
Yeah, well, good, man. Were you? I'm curious. Did that happen before you saw this movie, or was this kind of in the midst
I found
of
it on the
or?
train heading for the AMC. Yeah.
Oh shit! You came in hot to what
I came in hot.
Good, perfect. Jeff, do you got anything?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hit it.
Go.
Hit it.
I have another relevant one. Okay, guys, I think it's time for us to stop pretending like this country was founded on religious freedom. We need to stop. This country was not founded on religious freedom. This country was founded on certain people who wanted to be in secular societies. Not secular, sorry. Theological. They wanted to live in theocracies. That's the word I'm looking for. And just their own theocracy. So if you're from the North, you had to be a... the Puritan, their form of Protestantism.
Puritan,
if you were a Quaker,
Pilgrim,
No, if you were a Quaker, you couldn't. Quakers was different. That's why they were all in Pennsylvania. I don't know if you know this. In Virginia, the Virginia colony, until 1776, you were not allowed to live in Virginia if you were not Anglican Protestant. So the only reason that 1776 is important is because we pretended to get along with each other's religions to unify the colonies against the British. Because if we didn't, we all would have been. You couldn't live in Virginia, so it doesn't make any sense. So guys, we came here to discriminate. We came here to form our own religion and discriminate against everybody else. We literally did that on we did not come for religious freedom. We came for the opposite of that. We just wanted it to be our religion. That's it. And that's why, again, the Quakers were in Pennsylvania. So and this is also before Muslims and the Jews. So if you can imagine, I don't think in the Bible, or sorry, in the Constitution, they were sitting there going, oh yeah, and by the way, on Saturday we can take that off for our Jewish friends, and on Friday we should make room for certain religions to pray. I do not think that's how this nation was founded. So we just have to be realistic about these conversations as we segue into talking about our film.
Yeah.
Me and Jeff lighting up the YouTube.
The religion of
damn it! I wish I was more clear in my language there, but I think we all know what I'm talking about.
No, I know what you mean. And the religion of the holy capitalistic dollar. That's what really founded this country. I mean, pilgrims may have wanted to leave here the most, but then capitalists were like, we can exploit those motherfuckers and make a lot of money.
Two biggest lies: all men are created equal. And freedom of religion. Kind of not. I guess the second one wasn't a lie, but it's certainly dishonest.
Yeah. Let's talk about women talking because no. I'm glad both of you are
if anyone's
about both of these things because
this is our drop-in point on YouTube. If anyone has skipped straight to this point, go back.
Yeah.
It's worth
I didn't even mean to do that one, but Dave, you inspired me because it's fucking bullshit.
I have another gripe, actually, if we're just going to point out
Let's
some
go.
things.
Let's fucking rock. Last one.
Let me, a little bit of levity, even though it's a serious subject. Why do white men who have taken the oath of presidency have such trouble putting top secret documents in the right places? I don't understand.
Put your fucking toys away.
What is happening? Yeah, is this a common thing? And now, because of Trump's issue, now we're just like looking around and we're finding things places. Would this happen if you looked at every ex-president or vice president's house? I don't know. But this has just been a really strange, eye-opening thing. I don't think this would be news at all in another time if it wasn't for the way he handled his situation.
I mean, I want to say, if you're
I also don't feel super comfortable that it was just there were some top secret documents locked in Biden's garage.
But also, if you're gonna throw stones, make sure your fucking house is in order.
Yeah, because then they found more later.
Because like he literally just discounted his entire argument. It's like.
Well, not his entire one, because he didn't obstruct. He didn't obstruct justice. Also, it was a lot fewer. So like it's hard to accidentally steal 160.
If you're going to take the high ground, you have to be flawless with these people. Like if
it is possible that he did.
Yeah, he shouldn't have said that. But I want to live in a world where people make mistakes. They're just, what is the great John in Jurassic Park? I do not blame people for their mistakes. I only ask that they pay for them. And I just, just want to live in a world where the way you deal with those things is, you're held accountable accordingly. And anyway, not to get too political, but they're handling it very differently. And somehow it's,
see, we swing at both sides, people. We are fair, open, and honest to those who deserve it. Are you ready to talk about women
Donald
talking?
Trump.
Oh, God, yes, please.
Let's talk about women talking. Yeah.
Written and directed by Sarah Polley, based on
negative.
I'm not drinking because I said fuck Donald Trump. Okay. Fuck you, Dave.
Based on the 2018. This is based on the 2018 novel of the same name, as we mentioned before. The cast of this film, we got one Critics' Choice nomination, but it really is a fantastic ensemble piece that is anchored by Rooney Mara, Claire Foy, Jessie Buckley, Judith Ivey, and the lone male representative in this film, or at least the lone adult male, is
the only one you see their face.
Ben Wishaw. This is produced by
Don't forget about Will Bowes, the census bus driver, the census truck driver.
Okay, cool. You're just looking at IMDb now and shouting people out. Yeah. There are other people in this film as well. That is true. Those are the names you probably know. And last but not least is Frances McDormand, who was a producer on this film, of course. Yeah. And I'm really happy that she chose the role that she chose, because when I saw her, I was like, oh, shit. Fucking on.
Yeah. Did she have like two lines?
By surprise. Yeah, exactly. It was mostly unspoken, her role. Yeah. Brad Pitt also produced this with his company, and that the nomination went to Jessie Buckley. No surprise to those of us who have seen it, based on just those kinds of things being drawn to the award show. But this is very much an ensemble piece. Very curious to hear you two talk about that. And I'll give you the pitch, but I'm leaving out one detail if you're looking at the IMDb pitch. I'm going to leave out one detail because it caught me by surprise, and I would like for those of us who haven't, those of our listeners who haven't heard it yet, to not know one little tiny thing.
Why don't you just start the IMDb blurb after the comma?
Yeah, I think that's good. Okay. The women of an isolated religious community grapple with reconciling a brutal reality with their faith. And I think we can say what the reality is, which is there have been a lot of rapes, a lot of sexual assault, to the point where most, if not all, of the women who are congregating, I think it's all of the women who are congregating have been raped. And they live in
kids, women, like all of them.
And that's the inciting incident of this film, which is, we can also say, was a child was assaulted. I believe the child was 3
and woke up. No. The inciting incident was the girl catching him.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Because she saw his face and realized they'd been lied to.
Yeah, so that the society has decided to tell women that the devil, ghosts, evil spirits were actually committing the violence, which has literally the women are left bloody. Like they have scars to show from these attacks.
It's the commune equivalent of, well, what were you wearing?
And because a kid found that it was a man, they arrested all of the men in this society and took them to jail. And they are going to post bail. They have 2 days. The women have 2 days before the men are going to post bail and return home. So they essentially have 2 days to decide what to do. I think that's a decent enough place to leave.
Was that clear? Because I thought it was only the one guy that they caught that she saw his face and ID'd him was taken to jail. The other ones went in to bail him out.
I'm not sure now that you're bringing it up. I thought the ones he named were also taken into
I'm pretty sure they only took
custody.
3 of them. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they only took like 3 of them.
He
So where
was
are the-
called,
where are the rest of the men?
The rest of the men went to town to bail him out
But then he comes back.
to
Just
get more
him.
money.
Yeah, which is,
yeah.
and he wasn't the
He
one
comes back
who
to get
was
more money.
accused. It wasn't Klaus. It was another person that is unnamed. It's always an unnamed person.
To anybody who wonders if we edit this podcast, you got your answer.
Yeah, there you go. It doesn't really matter. I think that's
doesn't
kind
matter.
of the
That's
observation
important
that
too.
we should make is that there's just enough information that's put together for you so you get an idea of how men and women interact in this community. And there are literally 2 men who are represented in this community. I guess 3 in a way, but definitely 2. Ben Wishaw, who was he is the teacher because he's considered kind of a failed man. He's a failed farmer, and he represents like this community's idea of something less than what they consider men. And he is a part of this community of women because he has been chosen to take the minutes because he's the school teacher. He's the most educated. And there is this archetypal abuser, one of the husbands in the community named Klaus. And those are really the only 2 men that we hear talked about this whole movie. Or not even talked to. Ben Wishaw talked about a little bit, talked about exclusively Klaus. And he kind of represents the men of the community. And just to clarify as well, they do establish that it's not just men who are doing the raping. It's young men and maybe even super young men that we might call young, old boys or very young men. So it's rampant, it's extreme, and that's one of the most interesting things about this.
It's taught.
They're
vehicle.
teaching the boys, and they are excellent students. Also, one other clarifying point is they use nightshade to drug the women at night. So these are all planned attacks.
Yeah, these are blackout Cosby style fucking. There's a reason
And
why
then telling
these
the women
aren't
it didn't
happening out in the
happen.
open. Yeah, exactly. These women are unconscious, apparently systemically. I guess it's happened for a long time. It's the same thing that they use to. I thought this was powerful. That they say it's the same thing that they use to knock out the cows whenever they need to do.
Oh yeah, that was
some
powerful.
kind of medical things or to put them down and stuff. So they're knocking these young women out, these old, young, everybody, children, women out.
I mean, this is
Have sex
based
with
on
them in the
actual
night.
events loosely.
It is loosely based on actual events.
Unfortunately, I think any event that you can say that has taken any harm that has been put against women is at some point in history a fucking true event. We can just count on that.
Yeah, this one was in Bolivia. It was a community in Bolivia, I believe, in like 2009 or something.
Yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ. All right. Let's
What did you guys think? What did you guys feel of women talking?
Yeah. Dave, you came in hot. We were joking about it earlier, but seriously, came in hot to this movie feeling already upset with men in general. How did this movie treat you coming into it with that kind of perspective?
I was like lulled in. I was so high up in AMC, like they had this right at the back, so like I just about needed oxygen to get to the theater. Because it's a fucking tall theater, man. And I sat down and it came in as it does. Like it starts off with a narration telling you the story. I'm like, all right, cool. So this gives you everything you need to know. And then we settled into everyone in the barn where they're talking, and that's where the brunt of the movie happens. And I felt like it's by no means a blockbuster. It's by no means anything like that. But this is what theater is for, this movie. It's, you sit in the dark, you see something that affects you. And in this case, this one really did like enrage me because it was literally just them. Some people some people had grown to accept it. Some people were angry that it was happening and they wanted it out. Some people wanted revenge. And those were the 3 arguments basically they were positing during the thing. The performances in this are phenomenal. Rooney Mara, I don't think ever misunderstands the assignment. Did you notice it had 2 of the leads of the Dragon Tattoo movies? Rooney Mara and Claire Foy have both played Lisbeth in different Dragon Tattoo movies.
Claire did, yeah.
Has she really? I didn't know that.
She was in the
Wouldn't that be a fun
prequel
conversation?
book, whatever that other book was. Yeah.
It was Girl in the Spider's Web. She played it. Yeah. I enjoyed this. It's not going to make you feel good, I can tell you that. But I feel like it's something you should definitely watch. Not just because of like the social commentary and like the situation that it discusses, but also because it's such a well-made film. The pacing is beautiful. The shots are beautiful. Like they alternate lenses between the wides and the insides. I enjoyed this. Well, I wouldn't say I enjoyed this, but I was compelled by it.
John?
Yeah, I think that's how I'll start by saying I don't really think it matters if you like or dislike this movie. It's effective in its messaging. And messaging is probably slighting what it does. I think anyone who has had their ears open and reads newspapers or is on the internet at all, if you're alive for the past, 5 or 6 years now, this conversation has been happening with your friends, with your family, on the internet, everywhere. So my favorite thing about this was that Sarah Polley chose to adapt a book that dealt with these conversations and these issues with such an extreme scenario that it kind of forces it allows the characters to still have a complicated conversation, but with really hard rules. So it allowed them, in one aspect, I'm a passionate atheist, but for the sake of this storytelling, I think that it actually allowed for you to have some kind of hard context for why they had to see things in a certain way philosophically. And that actually ended up allowing someone like me who doesn't appreciate, not because they don't know the situation they're in, but doesn't necessarily appreciate or resonate with their justification for why they're using that philosophy. It allowed someone like me to still see figuratively, metaphorically, the points that she's trying to open you up to. We can talk, and I'm sure we will talk about what we're supposed to take away from this. But initially, I'm always a little icky when I sit down and watch religious movies and when the conversation is just exclusively based on religious context. But I felt like this did a good job of kind of transcending that by the end of it, so that it ended up being a much more interesting conversation because of those hard lines. And of course, the performances are wonderful. It is exactly what is in the title. This is a movie about women sitting around in a circle and talking about these issues. And that's pretty much it. So you need to actually sit down and know that it's kind of like 12 Angry Men. Like, it is just people talking. There's no chase scene. There's no action scene. It's not about that.
I will say the establishment that the men have left and they have 2 days adds a really good ticking clock, like tense element.
I thought they were coming back in 2 days, and I thought that's why they had to act, and that's why they were able to take all the horses and carriages without anybody noticing. Because I thought that
it does. Although, if I'm being fair,
I could be wrong.
I know what you mean, Dave, and I think I appreciate that. The filmmaking doesn't have an enormous sense of tension or urgency. I think it is really about these people having this conversation at that time in their lives more than it is about the ticking clock. That was always useful when it did come up. But for me, the best moments of this films were when somebody started in one place and found themselves arguing either another stance completely, or just when they would get lost in the conversation, and then somebody would kind of start laughing about the absurdity of the scenario, or laughing about how somebody could have a completely different take on the whole situation. The journeys that these women take in terms of their positioning from where they start is why you're going to watch something like this. And of course, it's one of those movies that I've said before, like, you're kind of sitting back as an audience member. Clearly they're trying to make a point. So you're in your head when you're watching it initially. They're going to start talking about it. But if you stick with it, it really does. By the end of the first congregatory scene in the barn, there's basically 3 of them. By the end of the first one, I was on board. And the second and third one are much more interesting conversations. The first one is like, let's get you here. Let's start talking about the issues. We'll point out our stances. Everybody's heard those before. What happens in the second and third time is when the thing I was saying initially, when it really gets heightened. Because of their philosophies with their religion, you're able to talk about these things in a different way than I think we talk about in our modern times America, which was super refreshing for me. How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that to start with the old. I turned my fucking heater off. I swear on my life, I turned it off before, and then I just turned it off again, and it's still like shouting.
I can't hear it. You're good, man.
Yeah, you're good.
I can't hear it at all.
Well, Zoom cuts it out. It'll go into my separate audio recording before Dave mixes this thing together. It's got a fucking New York, man. It was so freezing and whatever. Okay, I drank. Turn my drink thing off. Okay, I'll have more. Fine. I agree. No, I really like this movie. You're right. It's 12 Angry Men is a good stomping point. You know, maybe that is why women talking 12 Angry Men. I don't know if it needs that comparison or it has to be compared to a more masculine dominated piece. But what I would say is that the blocking in this is great, and really the construction of the dialogue, because like most good pieces, they're having this conversation, but we don't know their backstory when they start. So the way that we can start to learn about these characters, it's just the dialogue, and you can start to mine, information to fill in the gaps of who these people are and why they feel this certain way. And then you start seeing a little bit of flashback and a little bit more backstory. And you hear the characters start to reveal a little bit more of themselves, all in the context of this story, more specifically this conversation. The way in which this unravels is handled really, 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 really well. Could there have been some more dramatic tension here and there? Yes, I guess so, but that's not the point of the film. So I think that's what you were saying, John, which I completely agree with. So for me, I know this sounds crazy, but in the book, it's actually from the only literate person's point of view. It's essentially the minutes. I forget if we made that clear that the women aren't taught. So
what's going on out there?
Is it me now or is that you?
I think it was a neighbor. Somebody
I think that
screamed.
One of John's neighbors got the bad crack today.
So the book is from Ben Wishaw's character's point of view, August. The women aren't allowed to.
Oh, wow.
They're not allowed. The whole thing is the minutes and his thoughts. He's writing the whole time, which they do a decent job in the movie of every time they look over, he's just kind of like scribbling and doing things. Which I think is fascinating that the only male character, the whole thing is from his point of view. I think that's a very interesting device. That I don't have the mental wherewithal to unpack that appropriately, and I didn't read the book. But when we had I know this sounds crazy, but when we had the outsider point of view, so when we had the tween girls start to turn, when we had Ben Wishaw start to emote, when he started to, at first he wanted to be in the background and he did a good job of it, but you could tell how well crafted. He's really one of our finest actors. Like, he's a true character actor, not a Gene Hackman character actor, but a true character actor.
We're dancing on spoilers too now. So
yeah. But like once we started, they did a really good job of going in and out. We had our four main characters essentially. I'm counting in Judith Ivey's character and the other elder lady who I'm not as familiar with. And then Sarah Polley did a really good job of starting to show us a little bit farther out and seeing what the stakes are. I thought that became more gripping and more powerful as we went along. And I thought they handled the little cutaways they did too really well. There was one that just fucking knocked me out. When you had all of these women, they all just started laughing hysterically. It was the first time in the movie where all of these women who had been through serious trauma and are contemplating a very serious question, or I guess a series of questions, but they're contemplating one possibility based on a list of 3 choices, which we'll unravel in a second. And they just start something, I forget, I don't even remember what it was. And they start laughing hysterically. And then out of nowhere, our narrator just says, sometimes I think people laugh as hard as they'd like to cry. Yeah. Out of nowhere, they just fucking dumped that on us. And then they went into this little section where it started to come back down and we started the kids running around and such. And when we have liberated ourselves, we will have to ask who we are. The fact that they're sitting there and they have to not just contemplate what to do, but also who are we? Are we the kind of people who leave, if we, etc. So I know I'm dancing on spoilers, but
yes, you are.
These lines were very profound and they were very earned and they were very simple. And I think Women Talking is such a good title because you can literally put any adjective after it and it works. Women talking fast, women talking slow, women talking profound, women talking aggressively, women talking sweetly, women talking angrily, women talking kindly. Every single adjective works after that initial title. And I saw this in subtitles because that was the only time that I could go. And it would say women speaking indiscernibly, women singing, women. And so it was really fun to watch that as well. And I got the gush alarm. So thank you for playing me off. I will shut the fuck up.
All right. So we're gonna move into spoilers so we can just open this up and not have to dance around certain things.
Yeah,
so
nice.
We're going to turn on the spoilers. Go and see this. Get hold of it.
I know you just came off my section, but can I tell you a little bit more about what's in the book and where this is coming from? Would that be helpful?
After I hit the spoiler button?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, Bolivia is where this the actual events took place between 2005 and 2009. 130 women claimed to have been raped. And they were using an animal anesthetic, as you mentioned. This is a Mennonite society, so it probably looks and feels like the puritanical things we've seen in New England or Pennsylvania, of course. There are believed to be 30,000 to 40,000 Mennonites in Bolivia right now. So we can imagine that this kind of stuff is still happening. Many speak Low German and do not speak Spanish or any other native language. They shun technology, etc. 150 women testified during the trial. And they claimed that hundreds of more were being silenced. And the men were ultimately sentenced to 25 years in prison. So I guess that is ultimately a good thing. But I should also say, it was good to go in. I had no fucking idea this was set in 2010 until they said the census thing was coming around.
Right?
And I was like, what? I just thought it was set in the old times, but they were talking like now to make it a little bit timeless.
They pulled a Shyamalan on us.
I had no idea. So, and because it's funny that these women can't read or write, but they were speaking as if they could be standing in a pulpit. And I thought that was a very interesting choice.
That kind of, on occasion I noticed that. And I was like, if you have no access to education, how do they learn some of the words they're using in the context of those words? Like through overhearing conversation or what? And that bore me out of it for a second.
I wonder if all of the words were in the Bible, and because they're only taught the Bible orally. And so I wonder if they only used language that was found in the Bible. I wonder if that was an assignment for a writing assistant or something. Anyway, where should we head now?
I think that's supposed to be, it's kind of what I was talking about. This issue has existed forever, and it exists in all societies.
And it does now. Oh, sorry. Only 8 men were sentenced to 25 years in prison.
I wonder if it's like in the movie, the ones that were named.
Yes,
that's something that
it's loosely based on that event, very loosely.
Yes.
And that's something that I thought we kind of touched on it earlier. But again, like we're probably gonna end up talking about some specifics that happen in the movie, but those specifics are supposed to be suggestions for what you're supposed to take away from an issue movie. This is you can't hide from it, right? And one of the things that I did find really interesting was that her lack of clarification and therefore ambiguity on how many men were doing the raping.
Yeah.
Because every single woman, female, child, it didn't matter. Every single one of them was raped. There were no exceptions.
Right.
And yet we didn't find out, because a lot of this is from the female perspective in this community. All we know is that one person was caught, and that one young man named 3 other people. That's all we know. And then we eventually find out that Klaus character, one of the only husbands, another thing I was confused about, who's married and who's not. Is nobody else married? Or was it just Jessie Buckley's character? Because he's the only husband that gets referred to, also abusive, drinking, alcoholic rapist. That's
probably racist too, yeah.
So I found that I'm just trying to give more and more examples of how extreme this scenario is.
Could you imagine being that one guy that named names when you got back to the colony?
And all the women are gone, and now you're stuck with this guy who named names.
Yeah.
I don't know. So how do you want to talk about this, you guys? Because I feel like I know you give me shit when I jump to the end of things, but the ultimate resolve and how they get there is kind of what this movie's about, and the way you unpack that decision, I think, is what's so interesting about this movie.
Just before we move to that, I found it very interesting when we started the conversation. They were posing the conversation as questions, not statements. It was like, these are our options. What do we think of this? What are our options here? What should we do? And it's almost like they were inviting you in to decide a path along with them, like from the film perspective. And same as occasionally comes to some of the characters, I found myself changing sides because I was all about when those guys get them back, fuck them up.
Mm-hmm.
Like Scythe in the field, gonna find pieces of bodies for years, fuck them up.
Let's clarify first that initially this film opens with them saying, yes, we're totally uneducated, but today we learn to vote. And as a absolute democracy, every woman in the community, and I think children too, voted on 3 choices: do nothing, stay and fight, or leave. And after
the first one was forgive.
Yeah, there was forgive as part of it. Forgive
was
It
do nothing.
was do nothing.
No, forgiveness goes into it's do nothing. Forgiveness can bleed in. I thought that was one of my favorite conversations.
Well, that's
how
where
forgiveness could find its way into all of them.
That happened
so
later.
Do nothing, stay and fight, or leave. And then after that, because there was a tie between stay and fight and leave, there was a representative democracy that was appointed by basically three families of women. And initially, in that first conversation, Frances McDormand is the matriarch of the family that wanted to do nothing. I thought it was very interesting that off the bat, she says, I think we should do nothing one more time. She basically poses her stance. And then they say, well, we're not going to do that. And she just exits and we never see her again. Until we see like a glimpse of her at the end. So again, I can't help but when you're watching a movie, it's an issue movie, and I'm not really interested in characters as much as I am with what the characters are saying and doing. So I couldn't help but observe from the very beginning, women who are not willing to even take part in these conversations are going to have these decisions made for them or are going to be left out of the conversation. And I thought that was almost one of the only things that was absolute for me in this movie. In terms of what I felt like was being represented or suggested, she chose not to be a part of it. And therefore, she's not really going to have any impact on what happens to her or her daughters or the other women in that community. And
it's like staying home on election day.
Yeah. Even though she did vote and she was, appointed.
I'll take it.
So
did she have a child that had needs?
Yeah.
Her granddaughter was blind in either one or both eyes.
We saw somebody at the end too that had a disability, and I couldn't remember if it was Frances's child or if it's somebody else's. But
her child
her daughter was
Yeah,
maybe I couldn't remember if it was grandchild or if she was just a helper
needs.
in the society. Yeah, I all these things. I sound like I'm unclear, like I don't remember the movie, but I think it's intentional that these little details don't take over the point of the movie. Because I think what they're also saying is that people have their own self-interest. So it's not just mob mentality. This is a very richly democratic process. I also thought it was fascinating that it's Claire Foy's daughter that had the most recent assault, right? Who was 4 years old. And Jessie Buckley was the more angry character. Not that it's that simple, but she was more of the firestorm, more of the firecracker, I would say.
Not initially. I feel like Claire Foy was
of course not initially because it happened right away. But then they almost, I guess in a way they almost sort of switched sides to the point where Jessie Buckley, I thought she was going to start, tearing walls down or something in there.
That whole speech where they got involved about, if I stay, I'm going to become a murderer and violate my own faith.
That's another one of my favorite lines. None of us are murderers. And Rooney Mara says, not yet.
Yeah. All right. I don't if you guys want to start it off differently, I think, but I don't know how to talk about this movie without talking about the decision. So they eventually decide to leave. And they have a lovely conversation at the very beginning of the first meeting of the differences between the certain vocabulary they're going to use to define what they're hoping to achieve by whatever goal they decide upon. And one of the first initial debates on that kind of vocabulary is, are we fleeing or are we leaving? And on the ballot, the initial ballot, it was leaving. And they have get into one of their first arguments over, there's a difference between running away, fleeing, and choosing of your own agency for the right reasons, and that's relative to you and your goals, for why that makes more sense for you to continue living the life you want. And for them, that was completely relative to their religious, or their relationship with their faith, with God, and their community of women that they were trying to, protect. So at the end of this movie, they come to the decision that they should leave. And so I'm ready to just ask you guys like what we thought about that, because I wanted to go see this with my girlfriend, and Elizabeth and I were talking on the way home. And of course, we went in and out of a bunch of different conversations, but I feel like the overarching thing that was the most relevant to me was that this ultimate statement from this director who's making an issue movie is that these women choose to exit the community they're in. So that left me with two enormous thoughts in my head. And the questions are wonderful. I'm not saying I have any hard answers here. One, was she saying that figuratively or metaphorically, because most of us don't live in an insulated religious community, that we are, or the answer is to leave the current society, whether that's just culturally, no longer choose to subscribe to the way it was, or I think we are living in that world since Me Too. I feel like we are choosing and seeing, especially young men, it's so obvious in that generation that's below Gen Z, to just see that these kids are being raised differently. It's not cool to watch, the kinds of movies and TV and the way we were cultured and nurtured to think that these certain things that aren't fucking mass rape, but are subtle things, are no longer even accepted. We are calling them out appropriately. So one, is it figuratively, metaphorically leave? And two, was she using this extreme society as a vehicle to talk about the fact that this may not be objective to all society, that the way we deal, we women, the way we support as allies for females in our communities, is it subjective from society to society? Was this whole conversation, I kept thinking when I was watching this movie, they are deciding their own fate in this own little community. They're not talking about women everywhere.
Yeah, no.
They're talking about them.
Yeah,
and those are the two biggest things I walked away with.
It's like the first rule of,
if you guys agreed, or
it's like the first rule of first aid. It's like you turn up, you assess for threats to yourself, protect yourself first. And I feel like this was a case of, we've been in this for so long, we know it's not going to stop. It's a cycle that's been continuing. The only decision that they were able to come to was to take themselves out of the situation. And they chose to take themselves out of the situation, so this stopped happening to them, because they knew that no one could help them. All they could do was help themselves by taking themselves away. Sometimes that is the only answer. It's like, if something is happening, the only thing you can do eventually is find the strength to take yourself out of that and go.
This isn't just an exodus, though. It is about a rebirth, which, of course, takes place after the film.
It's also a really great revenge, too, because none of those guys can fucking cook or anything. They said they wouldn't know how to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Like a day or two.
Yeah.
And she was like, I can't live without us. Yeah, certainly not after a day or two. She gave us 2 days without them. That's really great. That's so good.
It's so, even though, and this is another thing about the words that they're using, this isn't just fleeing, this isn't just leaving, which that's what it is in this film. It's leaving the society, but it is the chance to plant a new seed in another society. And I actually think that Ben Wishaw conversation, the first time he really gives them a full, assessment, some new information for them to ponder, is when they're debating whether or not 13 and 14-year-old boys are safe to travel with them, or whether it's too late. They're like 11 and 12 seems to be safe, but where is the cutoff, which is, of course, puberty. And he said, no, it's fine. You just have to, it is dangerous, and they're going to have to, we're going to have to be monitored, and we're going to have to be, but when we go to our new place in our new society, we are going to have to essentially be extra careful that they can flex these muscles, not in that way, of course, but that because a lot of this takes place outdoors for not the conversation, which takes place in the barn, but the way the kids are raised is outside, which is a good thing. It's just kids playing in the field is not the problem, right? And so it's like, how do we explain to kids when they start realizing they're stronger, when they start realizing that they have these emotions, how do we train them, not necessarily to contain them, but to understand, to have, oh my God, I just heard something fucking awesome today. I know I didn't finish my thought, but it was like, we need to learn so that we can understand our thoughts. Some people think that reading and educating ourselves is actually removing thoughts from our the way we view ourselves in our life and our existence. But actually, we need words, we need books, we need reading, we need facts and information to help us make sense of what already exists, what is going to happen. Now, of course, that's a longer conversation that a million dissertations could contradict each other on.
Basis of education. I mean, that's the whole.
Is it?
Teaching you how to think.
Yeah, I went to teachers college. I'm telling you, there is no simple answer to what is education. In fact, we've many days we have spent citing philosophers, reading books by educational founders, and there's no simple answer of what is the purpose of education. But one thing we do know is that it works, and it can work good, better, best, but it does work always. And so when you go to your new society in this film, start anew. What are the founding principles? And back to what I said before, who are we? Plant that seed first. And I think that's why this was really powerful for me at the end. It's not just that they left, but the hope that they can discover who they actually are and start from there.
To shift it to a completely different scenario, like we just had the Great Resignation, where everyone, whatever they want to call it, but everyone suddenly decided that the working conditions they were stuck in sucked and they didn't want to do it anymore. So they took themselves out of the situation and found something, went somewhere else. It's that sort of mentality. It's like, because I know, like, you get stuck in corporate America. It's like, it's literally the lyrics to 9 to 5, dude. Like, the boss is literally stepping on you to keep you down so that he can get ahead. And so a lot of people chose to take themselves out. Yeah, I threw Dolly in there.
That's what I was saying. Like, there's what would be the version of this in most people's reality? A shift in the zeitgeist, a shift in the way you're not going to physically pack up and get in your buggy and go God knows where using celestial navigation the way they do in this movie. It's much more physical and tangible for them.
Well, I mean, the plane had it, but
Australia was still Western culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Jeff, to what you were saying, I feel like to tie it back to one thing I found super powerful was at the very beginning, the narrator points out that in the midst of generations of this sexual abuse, there's such an intense sexual repression that the women, they never talk about the men, but I do want to talk about that eventually. Women didn't even have the vocabulary and the language to discuss what was happening to them. So in one aspect, there was this weird dichotomy where the tale is old as time. We have this group of women who are in this community, which was representing something that doesn't necessarily reflect a modern perspective, but the issue is just as real, and the urgency and need to talk about it and make a decision is still just as relevant. That dichotomy between that and the tools they have to understand how to deal with it, they're limited. Dave, I do agree with you that these women were very eloquent despite being illiterate. Whatever.
I mean, there are several ways they could have. Yeah, there are several ways that could have come about. So I'm not going to let that ruin anything. For me.
We don't need to get in the weeds there. But I really enjoyed that dichotomy, and I also just thought it was. I also wondered, and I'm just going to open it up because I don't have answers, and I just wondered if you also felt this question, stirring after you walked away, what the commentary was on sexual repression. Again, in this extreme society, those boys were probably also, those men and boys were also probably super sexually repressed. I don't know if they have education. The boys do go to school, but I bet they're not talking about fucking. I bet they're not talking about family life and family planning and sex education. So I also thought it was.
I don't think they mention that in the Bible. They don't talk about family planning, ovulation cycles.
Certainly not pleasant ones. There's a lot of rape in the Bible, so maybe that is where they fucking got it from.
Was as close as they got.
One more point for atheists over here. But sure. Well,
I buzz Dave, but sure, John, you could. Dave made a plowing joke.
Jesus Christ. Sow your seed.
You know what? I heard somebody make an interesting. Sorry, you go ahead. You keep going. You're on a roll.
No, that's basically. I just couldn't stop thinking about that. That it was so wonderful. I thought it was so effective that you were so aware, almost in a maddening way, whenever you observe people who are I think, unfortunately, caught in these scenarios where they don't realize that in another time, in another world, in the same time, they would have many more tools. They would be educated. These people weren't born into a third world country in that scenario. I know the book is set in Bolivia, but this is supposed to be America. And I think that she wanted you to feel that way. I think this is an intentional choice from the director, and that they didn't have the tools to be able to understand what was happening to them, but they did still live in a place where the same cause of the rape was the same justification for that sexual repression and lack of vocabulary. And I just couldn't help thinking about that. Since 2017, since 2018, again, if you're observing and you're reading, I'm very interested in the way different societies are responding to Me Too and to this conversation and how they're having it. And it just, I don't know, just kind of kept taking me back to, I'm so glad that she set this in a situation where it was a completely insulated society that was having to deal with it on their own.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know, but sexual repression, I don't know if you guys thought about that and if it got into your skin at all.
Yeah. No, that one I didn't. Because to me, they didn't rest because they had an outlet for it.
Wait, say
but
that
it didn't make you think, you didn't think once to yourself, really every single fucking woman in this place is getting raped and every single man is possibly accusable? Like, that is so extreme. So, like, where does that come from? Because I don't think she was trying to make a lazy, obtuse statement that all men are rapists. I feel like.
Well, and of course they're all drugging these women, so there has to be some kind of coordination.
They did have that conversation. It's like, are all these men rapists, or can we fix the teenagers?
I think the sexual representation.
And the answer was maybe.
And that kind of comes up later in the film.
Yeah.
But I think the sexual repression that I saw was visual because it was just the kids playing, and then they kept showing the boys sitting on the fence, wrestling, and it seemed like they were showing them as they were at the age where they were perhaps maybe just getting a little bit stronger than their female counterparts.
Yeah, they were. The boys always sat above the girls.
Yeah, nice. They did a lot of that too. I heard something recently, which is interesting, which I guess ties into this movie. This movie is really well done because it's just really well layered. So you're right. This is this one little conversation between three families, which represent this larger mini democracy, quote unquote, in this mini, agrarian community. And it is an issue movie about, rape and assault and whether or not you could take it. But it really is just about all women, femininity, feminism. It really is. It kind of encompasses a lot of these things. So even though this is just one issue, and of course this isn't the only issue that defines feminism or femininity, you can really say, like, when can women just say, fuck it? When can they just say, enough, I want my life back? You can't remove the sex from here. That is obviously paramount to this film. But any other issue or topic related to just equality, of quality of life, agency, it's all in there. And I think that's really, really great.
Did you find it interesting that, like, everyone was accepting of this while it was embroiled as a part of their faith? Like, when it was Satan doing it,
the faith thing,
they were accepting as soon as they found out it was a man. That was the snapping point, because, like, they'd been lied to this whole time. Their faith had been abused. Like, they'd been abused, and that was like the tipping point for everything.
And that's where Jessie Buckley and Claire Foy especially were like, get the fuck out of here. Whereas Rooney Mara, it's really interesting. She's like, well, I love my baby. Oh, it's like, it's very, very, very curious. I heard something really interesting, by the way, and I don't know how much this impacts us, which is when it comes to most issues that affect especially all pubescent people, so hormones, we talk about it societally, right? Boys go through puberty. They get more hormones. Boys get more testosterone. Girls get more estrogen. They all get progesterone, whatever. And sex, it's individual. It's this person has, you know what I mean? Sometimes we talk about it socially, like, oh yeah, they have needs and such, but it becomes this individual burden that kids bear that has been kind of taught into society. There's more to unpack there, but I have found that fascinating, where it seems at a very early age that we're stuck with this. It's ours. It's our burden to bear, and it isn't something that we can talk about a little bit larger. I don't know. It's very. I
guess that's kind of what I was asking about. Like, there is this kind of puritanical thing that I think is so natural for us to see being in Western cultures, that whether we're from different parts of Europe, Australia, United States, if you have been touched by the, anywhere where the Catholic Church or the Anglican Church has had or Jewish, or Muslim, I mean, honestly, all of the Western religions
any religion
really
in any society over the years where people found that they could use power.
Yeah. So I also I don't know. I don't really know what to say about that, but my favorite thing about this movie was also something that I thought put a real pin in my side, that she was framing it through this religious context. And one of the givens of most, I don't know of any other religion that doesn't really have a conservative tactic on sexuality. She took away their greatest tool.
Religion's obsessed with sex.
Putting them in this place. Yeah. So I thought that dichotomy actually yielded something really interesting.
Yeah. In this case, their faith was the device that allowed this to happen.
But it's also the one deal breaker that they won't leave, regardless of the three scenarios. Staying faithful and staying true to their faith it's going with them, it's staying and fighting, or it's forgiving. It's all faith driven, even though they're wildly different choices, including murder. They still would consider themselves persons of faith if they murdered for self-defense. Very interesting.
Which is the ultimate observation, which they finally all get on board with, is completely relative to their religious beliefs. When what's her name? Can't remember if it's the which of the elder women it is, makes the point that to be truly pacifist, I think it's Rooney Mara's mother, because they believe in pacifism is not to consciously put yourself in the way of violence. Which I got to say, there was a little bit of me that saw this on Martin Luther King's holiday. That what would Dr. King think about that? That's kind of the opposite of a lot of our nonviolent revolutions in America with civil rights, and India with Gandhi have consciously done the opposite of that. And these women chose, the whole point of this was that our version of pacifism is to remove ourselves from conscious violence. I think that this all really ended up becoming relevant to that, because everybody got on board once she made that point. Did y'all feel that way too? Like that was the final thing where they all kind of yielded and said, you're right. So therefore we have to all leave, and we have to leave together. I thought that was something else that was,
I thought that was cool.
Everyone except for Frances McDormand, right? Every single woman and girl left as a unit.
And she even tried to stop her kids, but nope, they were out.
I couldn't tell in that moment. I couldn't tell if she was trying to stop them or if she was just saying, you do you.
I think
I'm staying here.
No, I think she let them have agency.
The you do you happened off screen, I think, where she was definitely trying to keep them there.
The hand squeeze and the look. I think I felt differently about that look, Dave, but it's good. I think it's ambiguous enough that you can kind of do what you want.
I thought it was, I'm staying. I really think you should stay, but ultimately you should be allowed to make the choice.
Yeah. How about some standout lines, you guys? There was one I was just racking my brain.
How about this one? You ready? I'm sorry, but I think I might be dying. Or even better,
just your glasses.
get me into a buggy now and let me die on the trail.
Yeah, I'm not being buried in this colony. Get me into a buggy now. I'm not dying.
Let's process it into fuel. How about that? Let's process it into fuel. Their conversation. That's cool.
Yeah.
When they also didn't say the word rapist for 45 minutes. I thought that was fascinating. They didn't talk. They didn't say assault or rape. I was even surprised they had
the word. Is the word rape in the Bible? Because I was surprised they even used that word.
Not sure.
The
boys have been excellent students is another one when they talked about that. Yeah.
Even more powerful than that, though, was when Jessie Buckley realized the boys are not the only ones who have been excellent students.
That was a moment for me.
I am allowing myself to be. That monologue was fantastic.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines was when Rooney arrives at the line. Was it Rooney or her mother who says, we sometimes confuse forgiveness for permission?
Yeah.
And I thought that was like, oh, fuck. That was a good one. There was another one that Rooney said at the beginning about, she was making an observation on being sorry. And I can't remember. It was something about how you feel sorry for yourself, but I don't know if you guys remember that one. But in a midst of a bunch of sprawling conversations, I know. I really enjoyed the Jessie Buckley's mother's, her parables about her horses. For a while, they were just used for kind of some levity, but clearly there was a point there. But the women didn't super take them seriously. But her final observation that when I'm on the road and it's hard to see right in front of you, you don't know where you're going. So the ultimate test of the goal you're trying to achieve with, in this case, your faith and your discipline for following that faith, it needs to be further down the road. You need to start focusing on what your ultimate goal is and not try to just see what's right in front of you, because what's right in front of you will convince you to stop. And there were a lot of really good lines like that. So honestly, I'm not going to just ultimately praise this movie. It's not a criticism, but I could not get out of my head when I was watching this, because you're kind of waiting for them to make amazing points, there are enough moments in this movie for you to be like, shit, that's a good point. Shit, that's a good way of looking at it. Shit, that was a really great monologue that will get you from A to B to C to D. Because I just think that's important to say. I think most people are going to watch this streaming. And
see, I got there early enough to finish my peanut M&Ms before the movie started, so I just sat back and let all that wash over me. It was great.
Yeah,
nice. I didn't get in my head too much. I just let the story flow. It really flows.
Here's a question for you guys: who do you think she made this movie for? Who was her audience?
All women, every single one, but in men too. I think it's everyone.
Yeah.
She made it for the men. What do you think?
I don't know. Elizabeth and I had a conversation after this, and I love asking a lot of my, female friends, not putting them on the spot, but we're all just trying to listen and watch and do as much as we can. I asked that question, and she said a response, and I've had other friends who have said similar responses in conversations like this that, a lot of women already know, already feel these ways. And it's not necessarily that all women feel the exact same, but that
I don't know. Ultimately, I think she made it for herself. This barn conversation probably has been happening in certain ways since the beginning of time. I can't remember. I feel like an asshole, but one of the very first books written by a feminist, first wave feminist author in the 50s in America is called it's called something like The Thing You're Not Supposed to Talk About, or The Silent Conversation. It's about what women are discussing behind the scenes. But what's interesting to me about is that this kind of showed me that maybe the dangerous assumption is that women think that all women feel the same way about it. And that there's actually the application, the tactics of what they're going to do to achieve their goals may be very different. And I'm not saying that in like I know the answer, but I just have a very strong feeling that the average man is not going to press play when this drops on Prime or HBO.
Yeah, it's too bad, but it's true.
No, that's true.
And I also just don't know if she thought to herself, every woman is, a lot of women are going to eat this up. Like, I don't know. You when you're making movies, you have to think, who's my audience? Who am I making it? Who am I selling this to?
This will definitely be a tester, though, for
her answer.
Like, this will be a tester for the Tinder date follow-up.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Can you imagine?
Yeah. Oh, we're going to watch this tonight.
Dating for the first time. Oh my God, trying to do that? Yeah, that would be that would be rough.
It's funny you said that conversation's been happening through history, because you know what? The second that Mars colony is ready, I have a funny feeling this fucking conversation is going to happen again.
Fucking Mars, stay the fuck away from Mars. In fact, this isn't one of my gripes, but it was on my potential list, which is stop telling me whether or not Mars had water. Tell me how they fucked it up. Stop saying, oh yeah, oh my God, it had water. Oh my God, it had water. Okay, what happened to it? What happened to the water? I don't give a shit if there was water. There was water there. We know. Find proof. Tell me what happened to it. What happened
Ask
to
Arizona, dude. There's a model for Mars right now.
That's what I'm saying.
Atmosphere. There's no ozone. That's what I meant. What happened to the atmosphere? What happened to the ecosystem?
A suburb in Arizona literally had their water turned off this weekend.
All right. I guess we're winding this conversation down about women talking. Thank you so much for listening all the way through to the end. We're going to wrap it up like we always do with a quick round of What You've Been Watching, where we give you our recommendations of the week. Dave, we'd like to start with you. Let's get right into it. What have you been watching?
Bring it. I wrapped up the Disney show Willow, which is the follow-up to the film Willow.
Yeah.
Which anybody who listens to a movie podcast should know what Willow is. Mm-hmm. Look, the show started off slow, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get into this. Fucking grabbed me right to the end, and I'm hanging for season 2 now. Like, it gets so much better as it goes along. I caught, of course, being an avid gamer, the HBO Max premiere of Last of Us. I'm happy to report that is incredibly faithful.
Just one episode so far, right?
It's an hour and 20-minute episode.
Great.
Yeah, it's a movie-length opening of the show, and they needed it because there's a lot to get through at the beginning before you settle into the plot.
Were you the one who texted us and said it has like some crazy high rating on some?
Yeah, it was 100% on Rotten Tomatoes before it launched, from reviewers. I'm going to
watch it, but is it another zombie show?
No, it's something else.
Okay, thank you.
And the opening, the opening of the thing explains what it is in an interview that happens in 1960. The movie takes place in like 2023.
Okay.
So and it's
a disaster movie, or it's an apocalypse movie.
It is an apocalypse movie. But it's a really interesting twist.
It's a show, right?
And it's a show. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. But yeah, it's based on the game. The game had phenomenal writing, and it's nice to know that has translated really well into the series. So, again, going back to what my gripe at the start of the episode, a lot of, I want to use the word fucking incels, have been griping that...
Use it. Call those fucking assholes out.
Yeah, they've been griping that Ella's not hot. She doesn't look like the girl in the thing. And it's like... the girl in the thing is 14 years old. Fucking calm down, dude. You just fetishized a 14-year-old game character.
This is for all those fuckers.
Yeah.
Ella's not hot. She's supposed to be 14.
Yeah.
I like the actress who plays Jade in the show. She's been in 11 projects, and all of them you've heard of.
And me and Therese sat down and watched The Black Phone the other night in the dark.
Nice.
And I happily remembered where all the stabs were, so I didn't fall off the couch. Are you going to keep that
as your number 4 movie of the year last year?
It's still good. Dude, that scene where he's beating his kid, still fucks you up.
Yeah, of course it should.
Both of them are phenomenal in that scene.
Yeah.
Sorry not to riff back, but just very quickly, when you made that comment about the fucking incels, I just wanted to say one last time that I thought that the sexual repression from the community and what we're dealing with now, your opening with these Twitter fucking assholes, the opposite of sexual oppression and this access to endless amounts of pornography.
Well, I thought
that was really interesting.
But there's different kinds of sexual repression.
I know. You're totally right. And I just thought that she made me think about that without her ever having to say anything about the modern man and their access to internet porn and shit. But the idea of the distance between Klaus and Ben Wishaw's character, that she put them in these polarities. I found that very interesting. And hopefully the right man is somewhere very reasonably in between these two people. And
maybe
anyway,
2/3 of the way towards Wishaw.
Yeah, sure.
Poor Wishaw. I actually thought. Do you think Wishaw had an actor's secret in there? I thought he was going to be like. I thought he was going to say, "I have urges too."
I thought he was going to be the father of the baby.
There was a second, only a second.
I thought maybe he snuck in and even he did something. I'm glad he didn't.
I'm glad that didn't, because that would have taken away from it so much. But anyway,
I thought at the end,
man, he cried a lot at the end.
Yeah.
A little bit of a softie for me.
I thought at the end when they said, "Why do you have a gun?
edge."
Why do you have a gun?" I thought he was going to say, "Because I use it to rape." I thought he was going to say that.
Yeah, I thought that.
Sorry, no, I know. I didn't mean to laugh when I said it too, but I'm glad he didn't. He's just a great actor.
That's why he got buzzed.
Everything was on the table. Sorry, Jeff.
John, what you been watching?
Yeah, I have been watching. I watched all of The Bear in 2 nights.
Oh, great, right?
Yeah, it was
I
great.
still haven't seen
late
this.
to the party there, but to anybody who says there's too much screaming and yelling, kitchens can really be like that. So I found it very
you've never
authentic.
been in a kitchen.
Yeah. I found it very authentic. I really love a lot of the acting is really great. But ultimately, I was just so impressed with the payoff, because it has its thing and it does it really well with the way that they talk, the style of the show and the cinematography and the dialogue. The emotional payoff at the end really took me by surprise, and I was very moved by the end of the series. And the 30-minute episodes, you can watch it all really fast. And then I watched RRR the other night.
You got to it?
That is so on my list.
I got to it. Are we
going to have to talk about that?
With those, yeah, we should. It's right up there with the Bahubalis and just these massive Indian Bollywood epics. Tons and tons of violence and
dude, the scene
slow
with
motion camera and dancing and
the
singing
scene with the animals in the truck. You should see the VFX breakdown for that. It's amazing.
There's a lot of VFX, and there's so much VFX that it kind of feels like you're watching a video game for a good part of it, which is always a little frustrating for me. But ultimately, it did deliver. What Bollywood still gets away with that we don't get away with here is artifice. Like the comment I just made about the special effects, they get away with it there because it is supposed to be over the top. There is this inherent theatricality to it that is so embedded in their musicals, that they can just do these things and say ridiculous lines and show ridiculous things, and everybody's super strong or super sexy or super romantic or whatever it is. It's fun. If you're into that kind of movie, I think you're going to enjoy this one. So I had a good watch there. Yeah, that's it. What about you, Jeff?
I feel like I'm in between. I feel like I have a couple series that I started that I got to get finished with. Season 2 of Slow Horses, I'm really liking where it's headed. I've seen 3 or 4 out of the 6, and Gary Oldman he plays this great like drunk, pretends like nothing's an issue, or at least it comes across like nothing's an issue.
That's different. Usually Gary Oldman sucks. No, I'm kidding. Like,
yeah, the opposite. Whatever the opposite of that is Gary
but
Oldman.
in this season, I feel like they're testing him a little bit more in a really good way. It's different and good. I'm happy with it. I started Pachinko. I was at a friend's house and it's his birthday, and this just won the Critics' Choice Award for best TV series not in the English language, and it was really gripping. There was some really good. There's multi-generational stuff going on. There's like 1915 to 1920, and then 1980s, and I think there's another something. It's honestly, it was similar to Women Talking About. I was like, I don't know where I am. I'm missing some details, but I know this is great. So I'm curious. I have to keep listening with that. It does have subtitles though for a TV show. That's a lot to take on. So it's like one episode a night, but I'm doing well with that. And then I watched a lot of NFL football. I did. It's I'm really mad at the NFL for making this weekend into fucking 6 games. I think they did that last year too, but 6 games all at different times is really annoying. But
guys, I wanted to ask you.
that one wasn't annoying. I don't care.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you because I also watched. I also finally watched over this past week. I watched the Golden Globes at one point, and what do you guys think about The Fabelmans? Just best director, best picture.
I think that's going to be the highlight of its award season, but it'll be nominated for stuff.
Best award season budget. Like,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was still really touching. We all really enjoyed that movie, and it was really cool getting to see Steven up on stage, maybe one last time, for everybody really paying homage to him. It felt very positive.
That was cool. Everybody thanking him in their speeches.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, not like a weird kiss the ring kind of thing, but it felt very genuine. So I was really happy for him, but I was a little surprised.
Even like when the guy from Everything Everywhere All at Once won.
Oh, that was great.
He thanks Spielberg.
Spielberg gave his first 2 movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ryan Murphy, when he called him out and said, you know, Steven Spielberg greenlit my first screenplay. You know, that's what really got me. Like, there were so many moments throughout the show where it kind of ended up being about him. But give it up for The White Lotus. I really enjoyed Jennifer Coolidge's speeches, and then Mike White's speech was really funny.
Yeah, they were really, they were good. They're good.
Yeah.
I like Mike White.
And,
you
Abbott
all passed on this show. I love that.
Yeah. Abbott Elementary cleaning house. I thought that was. I've watched the first season of that show, and I really enjoyed it, but I haven't kept up with it. Does it turn into just the most incredible 1 hour or a single camera half hours? They won so many awards.
You listen to us tell you what we watched every week, and I do not think that's something
never
that we
been
should
on mine.
watch. I don't watch primetime show stuff, so I need to find it.
Anyway, things to think about.
Oh, what do we have next? I watched another Guillermo del Toro, one of those weird cabinets of curiosities, and I did not find it particularly.
Was it the rat one?
No, I saw the one with it was a monster one with the trippy 70s stuff and the 4 different people, and it was just weird. Just a weird one. Didn't click for me.
I still need to see Pinocchio. Jeff, what's the next awards thing for people to follow? Is the SAG-AFTRAs coming up?
The SAG nominations have come out, but that's not going to the event's not going to be for another month. I mean, there's all these because the Critics' Choice, there's going to be like People's Choice and those kinds of things, but the guild ones are not going to be until I think early February, maybe the end of January, but we have some time for those.
All right, we got at least 2 weeks.
It's the season, baby.
Yeah, I think it's later. I think the SAG's is like February. Okay, sweet. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time on the Love of Cinema podcast.
Peace.